Good afternoon, everybody. As Jonathan has said, my name is Anne Treasure, and I manage the Data Products and Society node for SAPRI, which is the South African Polar Research Infrastructure. So I'll just give you a brief overview of what SAPRI is and what we do, and then provide some context for SAPRI data, the types of data we can expect to get into the data center, and our involvement in marine and polar research, and then just an overview of an establishment strategy that we are using for the data center. Oops, I'm going this way. So briefly, for SAPRI, we were launched in 2021 under our Department of Science and Innovation. We're still in the first phase, which is the implementation phase. We were established largely in response to the need for an improved functioning of our polar research program, as well as improved access to infrastructure to facilitate and enable research, and improved use of resources of economies of scale. So we don't actually currently do the research ourselves, although many of us are involved in research projects or collaborate on projects, but we are there to support the government departments that organize the various aspects of the polar research program, and as I said, to facilitate access to the infrastructure to enable the research. So we've got a few key objectives. I'm not going to discuss all of these, and I'm going to go into this discussion, except for this one, which is to maintain and further expand the long-term observational research infrastructure. And there's quite a large focus on data. So we are designed as a consortium. We are hosted by an organization called, it also has the acronym SAON. There's an E in there, South African Environmental Observation Network. And then SAPRI itself has different nodes or integrated facilities, and these are hosted at different institutions. The plan is, or sort of the long-term vision for SAPRI is to become, in 12 to 15 years' time, to become a standalone institute. And all of those things will then fall under one umbrella. So just to provide some context for SAPRI data and our involvement in research, and the types of data that we get and what we can expect to get into the data center. So South Africa is the only African country with an Antarctic presence and program, and with Cape Town being Gateway City, that's where I'm based. And we operate 3 remote research stations. We've got one on Marion Island, which is part of the Prince Edward Island archipelago. And as you've just heard, one on Gough Island. So Gough is British-owned territory, and we lease part of that for a research station. It's one of our main meteorological stations for South Africa for our weather predictions. And then we've got SANAP for Antarctica. The projection of this map is a little bit deceptive, given that Gough Island is further north than Marion. It's at about 40 degrees south, and Prince Edward Islands are about 46. So similar to many of the Antarctic programs that are represented here today, we resupply these stations once each per year. And during these takeovers, we have large numbers of personnel in the stations, so a lot of researchers, a lot of scientists. There's a lot of data being collected on a number of different projects, both terrestrial and projects. And then most people leave, and we have overwintering teams that stay for the year, ranging in size from about 8 to 20 people, depending on the station. And over the course of the year, we can expect to get more sort of long-term environmental monitoring projects on the terrestrial side, particularly, and then students doing projects for PhDs and masters, that sort of thing. This is our polar resupply and research vessel, the SA-Gullis 2. And she's used predominantly for the resupply of our stations. And when we resupply our stations, we do very specific oceanographic transects. We've done these legs for many, many years now, so we've got a lot of oceanographic data for that. And we also have 1 to 2 dedicated oceanographic voyages per year, depending on funding. And then we've got a lot of instrumentation in the water as well, such as moorings and gliders. The SA-Gullis 2 is also commissioned occasionally for voyages, the most recent and well-known one probably being the successful search for Endurance. And when we do these voyages, we'll have a number of our scientists and engineers on board doing research as the voyage goes on. What's important to note for SAPRI is that we're not actually just strictly polar. We include quite a large marine component. We are officially sort of from the offshore of South Africa, from the continental shelf of the EEZ, all the way down to the ice and on the ice and around the ice. And then not just on the stations that we operate, we have researchers who collaborate on many of the other islands and other stations and many other areas on the ice. But then, so particularly from an ocean component, we have quite a large domain sort of around the coasts of South Africa and down to the ice. So I've also focused on the SA Golas too, but we'll obviously get a lot of data from other research vessels as well. So just to go through the integrated facilities of SAPRI and the types of data that get collected. So the long-term observations of the oceans node, this is, as you would expect, to sustain the long-term observation networks in the oceans and to support this research. So we have a lot of research that happens in the oceans, on the sea ice, deep ocean sites, sea floor, the overlying atmosphere. So we've got a lot of ship-based instrumentation for this, so the in situ ocean observing, and then a lot of autonomous observations as well, using things like moorings and gliders and buoys and others. The long-term observations on land integrated facilities. So this is to sustain the long-term observations on the subantarctic islands. What you asked for, on the continent and the ice shelves. And we've got a number of different research disciplines that are represented in this node. The Polar Lab. So this is a very exciting facility that's going to be built at the University of Cape Town. So this will be a suite of specialized temperature-controlled and sub-zero laboratories. This will be used for processing samples, for doing experiments, for calibrating and designing instruments. It'll also allow researchers to get experience in subantarctic or Antarctic conditions before going to the field or instead of going to the field. So we have a very strong sea ice research team at UCT, but with this Polar Lab, we expect to be a lot more. So the Data Products and Society facility, integrated facility, that's where I'm from. We're largely a cross-cutting node across all of the other ones. And our mandate is quite big. We are responsible for quite a lot. See Ria smiling there at the back. So on the data side, we are there to coordinate and establish the SAPRI Data Centre, to develop dashboards and products. So we're constantly assessing and reviewing what products are useful, what's required, such as the digital twin. This is a project, we have a team of engineers, at Stellenbosch University, have a team of engineers developing a digital twin for the SA Golas 2. So from the SAPRI side, we are supporting that and facilitate the project where we can. We're also responsible for all of the outreach and engagement for SAPRI, as well as the design and multimedia and marketing communications, such as the logo, which we designed and rolled out recently. So we're building a corporate identity for SAPRI as well, which includes the website and branding material, all that sort of stuff. So what is relevant to this discussion, though, today is the infrastructure for humanities and social sciences. So we're responsible for assessing the requirements of this community as well, and where we can provide support. From a data perspective, the data needs of the HAS community is currently taken care of by Ria, over there at the back, by the Antarctic Legacy of South Africa project that you're going to hear about next. But then the long-term plan is for also to be integrated into SAPRI, at which point you will need to take care of that data as well. So this has been a long introduction, basically, to just show you that we're responsible for quite a few domains of data right across the physical sciences, the terrestrial life sciences, engineering, and humanities, social sciences data. So the SAPRI Data Centre will be South Africa's National Antarctic Data Centre, the NADC, and it's hosted at a node of, so that's SAON with an E. SAON has its own nodes, and its data node is called the Orwazi node, data and information management node, and this is where the SAPRI Data Centre is housed. So this node already has existing infrastructure and systems. It's just a case of expanding this for SAPRI needs. So the establishment strategy for the SAPRI Data Centre, I'm largely viewing this as a three-pronged process along the lines of technical, governance, and human interaction. And it's important to pay attention to all three of these at the same time, which we're doing. So on the technical side, this is to ensure readiness for SAPRI data. So we're constantly assessing the technical requirements for this. So what systems development needs to happen for infrastructure planning. So where do we need to expand infrastructure or acquire new infrastructure? And for this, we're constantly assessing stakeholder needs. We have ongoing engagement with stakeholders and our data providers. And then also to align to the recommendations of SCADM. So, for example, implementing schema.org, aligning to Polder, which we heard about yesterday from Phil. And then part of our web design process is we're having a website or a web page for the SAPRI Data Centre. This will be the front end for the data center that'll link back to the data node to the repository there. And then also a lot of research into vocabularies and metadata schemas and standards, given that we have quite a wide range of different data types and domains to take care of. And these will all need to be on the same system. The governance side, so this is largely to do with developing documentation and policies. So things like the SAPRI data policy, data management plan, standard operating procedures for submitting data, metadata guidance documents, that sort of thing. And then also negotiating agreements where necessary. So most of the time this is not necessary, but sometimes it is. We are knee deep in some of these at the moment. So things like MOUs and MOAs. And then adhering to policies like an open science policy that our Department of Science and Innovation is hopefully going to roll out quite soon. And as signatories to the Antarctic Treaty, the obligations that we have under that. The human interaction side, so this is largely to do with stakeholder trust. I'm preaching to the choir here, so but this is along the lines of needing to build this trust. So there's a few things that impede data being deposited to a data center. So things like lack of trust in the repository, lack of trust in the people running the repository, and then things like lack of understanding and the necessity for good data management practices for data sharing, how to manage data, benefits of open science, that sort of thing. So to build this trust, we are really engaging with our stakeholders and planning on to continue this extensive communication. We're planning workshops and training materials, which we will translate into some of the traditional languages of South Africa. And on an ongoing basis, we are constantly assessing stakeholder data support requirements. So on the technical side, just a little bit more, I'm running out of time. So the data node develops open data systems, and these are distributed on what's called the ODP, the Open Data Platform. And this has fair data principles embedded into the systems and into the data curation procedures. And as the SAPRI Data Centre, we will continue to work with OWASI to ensure that best international practices will be adopted for data management. And then, as I said, we also constantly assess user needs for defining and managing the scope of services that we will offer. On the trust side, so very exciting news. The SAON Open Data Platform was certified by Core Trust Seal in September 2023. So it's currently the only Core Trust Seal certified repository in Africa. And this is very good for us at the SAPRI Data Centre because this is where our data sits on the back end. As I've said, on sort of the national engagement level, we're planning a lot of workshops and training materials, both in person and online. And then engagement with the international community, which is all of you. And this is providing us with fantastic input to all three of these tiers: the governance, the human interaction, and the technical side. And for this, in discussions with SCADM, we're busy compiling a document or template, I'm not sure what we're going to call it, just sort of the things that we're having to think about as we establish a data center, sort of the hurdles we're coming up against, considerations for that. And just on that, just to thank everybody in the community. There's a lot of you in this room, a lot, picking brains and asking lots of questions, but you've been very generous with your time and your advice. So we really do appreciate that support. So thank you very much. So just a list of considerations. I think I've run out of time, so I'm going to go through them. We've chatted about a lot of these this week already, but just a few things that we're thinking of at the moment. So with the wide range of disciplines we've got, that all need to be on the same system, and a lot of research fields that have a lack of metadata standards such as CIS and engineering, and you know what people use for those sorts of fields. A little bit of discussion that we've already had on large amounts of data coming in for images and videos, for example, and solutions to this in the long term. If it's a technical solution for storage, tightening up policies with what we accept, being more strict with our metadata. This is particularly our seabed researchers have very large amounts of this type of data. And then situations where we're spending a lot of money on infrastructure for researchers to do the research, but then they want to deposit their data elsewhere and get DOIs elsewhere, which is not great for our reporting purposes. On the data quality side, so discussions about level of responsibility for data quality, QA processes, and this came up yesterday. That line, I was chatting to someone about this yesterday. That line between insisting on, that perfect data set versus, chasing someone away or then thinking, well, that was a real pain to do. I'm never going to submit data there again because we don't have our policies and our enforcement strategies in place yet to actually force people to submit their data to us. So yeah, that's just a space that we're and then interoperability and alignment with other systems and platforms, and providers' hesitancy to make data open, which I think everybody understands the problems with that. And I'm going to stop there. So thank you very much.
We have a quick question for Anne. All right, I think you're off the hook.